My name is Liesbeth van Houts. I'm one of the fellows of 𝘰𝘰𝘯𝘯𝘬. I'm a medievalist, and I want to tell you a little bit about some recent research I'm working on. And my present research is writing an article about lead burial plaques. Now, lead burial plaques were the equivalent of identification tags that were very often buried with people in their graves. The purpose of these plaques is not entirely clear. On the one hand, they seem to have been pieces of evidence to show that the deceased had partaken in penitentiary prayers before they died. These prayers were very important to show that they had done penance for their sins in the hope to receive salvation, that God would forgive them their sins and allow them access to heaven. By far the more elaborate lead burial plaques that we have found are the ones that are the equivalent of our modern obituaries. They contained quite lengthy descriptions of someone's career, mostly of the clergy, but there are also some of aristocratic women who wanted their histories to be recounted. And one of the most interesting ones with the longest text, and one of the ones that are relatively very little known, is a lead plaque found in the city of Bruges in the 18th century. It was found in a hollow in the wall of the St. Donat's church, where the remains of a wooden coffin were found, and the wooden coffin contained a few bones and this lead plaque. According to the report of these findings, the lead plaque was found near the head of the body, and this we know from other finds is a very common place where you might find these lead testimonies of people's life. For example, there's one found in Germany of an empress whereby the bottom half of the lead plaque was corroded because her head had laid on that bit that we now don't have. But anyway, back to Bruges. The plaque actually commemorates the life of the daughter of King Harold, who famously died in the Battle of Hastings in 1066. Now, we know very little about what happened to the wife, the mother, and the sister of King Harold after he was killed at Hastings. But this plaque is the only evidence we have that his sister fled to Flanders. She had already decided that the religious life was her choice. She couldn't find anyone to marry her, and according to her obituary, she spent the rest of her life in Flanders, first at Saint-Omer and then at Bruges. Now, the obituary is clearly written by someone who knew her very well, because one of the things it says is that she looked very, very thin and that she didn't eat enough, that she starved herself, and it almost sounds as if she might be close to anorexia. And obviously her life was very, very sad. The obituary also tells us that she spent a time in Denmark before returning to Bruges, where eventually she died, interestingly on the same day that her brother, King Harold, adversary, died, that is William the Conqueror. Now, why I'm interested in this plaque is partly that it is an object of material culture. It's the type of evidence that is, although common, not very much used by historians, and it throws light on an elite English woman who, during the traumatic years after the Norman conquest of England, could only find a future on the continent. And the fact that this is one of the longest obituaries in the form of a lead plaque that have survived from the Middle Ages is testimony to the fact that in Flanders, some monks felt that it was very important that the memory of a member of King Harold's family was preserved.